I've got some troubling news about England's royal family.
Tom Parker Bowles arrived at Windsor expecting quiet recognition, not public humiliation. The car doors opened, the cameras shifted, and for one fragile moment, everything still looked controlled. Then came the sentence no one expected to hear at the gates. His name was not on the official guest list. In seconds, a private family tension became a public royal embarrassment, and Windsor's polished silence began to crack. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Tom felt the shock like a hand against his chest. He had come for a formal royal reception, a gathering where family warmth and court order were meant to move together without noise. Windsor Castle, one of the monarchy's most symbolic royal homes, mattered because it was where belonging was seen and measured. The official guest list, the approved record of who may enter a royal event, now carried one cruel absence. His name had been removed. Not misplaced, removed. The gate officer checked again, and that second glance made the humiliation sharper. Tom watched an aide lean close, speak low, and avoid his eyes. Guests nearby slowed enough to notice the pause. He tried to hold his face still, but disbelief moved through him before pride could stop it. He had been stopped at the entrance while others passed through. Camilla received the message inside, and the room around her seemed to lose its air. She did not ask whether her son had misunderstood. She asked who had changed the list. That question mattered because she knew royal households do not erase names by accident. A senior aide stepped forward, then hesitated, and his hesitation told her almost as much as his words. The aide confirmed the revision had been made the night before under direct palace authority. Charles heard the news and did not immediately move. The king stayed silent, and that silence struck harder than anger. He understood that helping Tom at once would look like overruling the order Windsor had just enforced. He also understood what doing nothing would do to Camilla. The monarch had spent years balancing love against duty, but this moment asked him to choose. Tom waited outside while the castle carried on behind closed doors. Camilla stood inside, furious, while Charles held back from the gesture that could have softened the blow. By then, Windsor was no longer asking whether a mistake had happened. It was asking something darker. Who had ordered the embarrassment, and why had nobody warned him? But before Windsor could understand the order, it had to understand the people wounded by it. This was never only about a missing name. For Tom Parker Bowles, Windsor had always been a place where politeness carried hidden limits. For Camilla, it was the one arena where family affection and royal duty collided in silence. And for Charles, the moment forced him into the most painful position of all: husband, king, and judge, standing between private loyalty and the unforgiving machinery of monarchy. Tom knew the castle had welcomed him before, but welcome was not the same as belonging. Windsor, one of the royal family's most important homes, mattered because every invitation there carried meaning beyond dinner, ceremony, or conversation. Royal duty, in plain terms, meant the pressure to protect the crown before protecting personal feelings. Camilla had understood that rule for years, yet she had always hoped her children could receive dignity without being treated like intruders. She did not demand rank for them, she wanted respect. The humiliation cut deeper because Tom had not been refused in a quiet office, or warned through a private call. He had been stopped where movement could be seen, where silence could be noticed, where every delayed glance became a message. Tom tried to keep his face still, but exposure has its cruelty. It tells a man that everyone else has learned his place before he has. Camilla felt that cruelty as a mother before she felt it as the queen consort. Her son's exclusion did not land like a scheduling issue. It landed like a judgment. The queen consort, the title given to the wife of the king, carries honor but not automatic power over palace decisions. That truth mattered now, because Camilla could sit beside Charles in public and still find her family held outside the protected inner circle. She looked at the aide who delivered the news, and her voice lowered when she asked who knew before Tom arrived. Fadas gave no clear answer. The king knew more than his face allowed, and that restraint made the room colder. He had seen the revised guest protocol, the palace-approved rules deciding who could attend events, and he understood why the change had been made. Yet he also understood what it meant to Camilla. His silence was not empty. It was loaded. William's name entered the room without being spoken loudly. The prince had been quietly connected to the tighter guest rules, and even the suggestion of his role shifted the air. Tom's missing name was becoming less like an error and more like a weapon, sharpened by memory. And that rupture did not begin at the Windsor Gate. It began weeks earlier, in a room where one careless remark changed everything. Every royal scandal has a moment people pretend not to remember until it becomes impossible to ignore. For Windsor, that moment came during a private dinner at Clarence House. The table was small, the conversation guarded, and the smiles carefully measured. Then Tom Parker Bowles made one comment about future invitations and family needing a proper place, and the room turned cold before dessert was served. Tom had not raised his voice, but confidence can sound like defiance when the wrong person hears it. Clarence House, the London residence long tied to Charles and Camilla, mattered because private family conversations there often carried public consequences later. Royal guest privileges, in simple words, meant the quiet approval that allowed certain people to attend sensitive family and palace events without question. Tom asked why Camilla's family still seemed to stand outside those privileges when everyone expected loyalty from them. He thought he was naming an unfairness. William heard something else. The prince sat across the table and watched Tom carefully. William did not interrupt, and that silence made the moment more dangerous. He understood that the monarchy could survive affection, but it could not survive confusion over who held influence near the crown. If Camilla's children were seen moving too freely through royal spaces, critics would call it access without duty. That mattered because every invitation could become a signal, and every signal could become a story. Camilla tried to soften the comment with a small laugh, but her eyes gave her away. She knew Tom had stepped onto ground that Windsor guarded fiercely. The queen consort wanted dignity for her son, yet she also knew the line between family warmth and royal entitlement could turn sharp in an instant. She touched her glass, looked toward Charles, and hoped he would redirect the room before the silence hardened. Charles felt the trap close around him. The king could defend Tom and risk looking weak in front of William, or he could protect the old boundary between royal bloodline and married-in family and wound Camilla in the process. That boundary mattered because monarchy depends on visible order. The public must know who represents the crown and who simply belongs to the family. Charles chose quiet. His quiet said nothing, yet it gave everyone permission to remember. William acted after the dinner. The prince asked for a review of non-royal family attendance, meaning a check of which relatives without royal roles were allowed near sensitive Windsor events. On paper, it sounded practical. In truth, it questioned how close Camilla's relatives should stand to ceremony, access, and influence. By the time Tom's car reached Windsor, the decision had already been made behind closed doors. So when the gate officer lowered his voice and refused entry, the confrontation was no accident. It was the delayed explosion of that dinner. The most humiliating royal moments are rarely loud at first. They begin with a pause, a glance, a staff member checking a page twice. Tom Parker Bowles stood at the Windsor entrance while the officer searched the list again, and finally stopped pretending. Behind him, another car slowed. Ahead of him, the castle doors remained closed. In that narrow space, embarrassment became confrontation. Tom leaned closer, not angry yet, only certain that someone had made a mistake. He asked the gate officer to check again, because late administrative changes can happen before a royal reception, a formal gathering where invited guests meet members of the royal household under strict palace control. The officer nodded, but his face had already changed. The official guest list, the approved record deciding who may enter, no longer gave him protection. That mattered because Windsor did not merely host people. Windsor measured them. The officer contacted an aide inside, and the reply came back with chilling simplicity. Tom was not to be admitted. Tom heard the words and felt irritation drain into something colder. He looked past the officer for one impossible second, as if the closed entrance might correct the insult by itself. It did not. The refusal stood there, calm and final, while the delay became visible to everyone near the gate. Camilla heard the message inside and rose so quickly that a teacup rattled against its saucer. The queen consort, the wife of the king but not the ruler herself, understood why the wording mattered. Her son had not been delayed for security. He had been refused by authority. She asked who had sent the reply, and the aide before her swallowed before answering. His fear told her the palace was not confused. The palace was obeying. Camilla pressed again, and a senior courtier finally gave her the words no mother wanted to hear. The amended list had come through with authority, meaning staff had no power to soften it, question it, or quietly fix it. She went still, because that phrase did not point to a clerk. It pointed upward. It pointed inward. It pointed toward the heart of the family. William's office was mentioned softly, almost as if the name itself might deepen the wound. The prince had been tied to the tighter protocol, and the room changed before anyone explained more. Camilla demanded to see Charles, but the king was already elsewhere, holding the file that made the exclusion possible. Tom, still outside, was beginning to understand that silence had become the verdict itself now. The gate had delivered the insult, but the true power behind it was waiting inside Windsor's walls. Power inside the monarchy rarely announces itself. It moves through signatures, protocols, and rooms where voices never rise. While Tom Parker Bowles remained outside, Charles sat with the revised guest file open before him. One name had been removed, one boundary had been restored, and one family had been reminded that affection may open doors in private, but monarchy decides which doors remain locked. Charles stared at the page as if the ink itself had weight. The revised guest file, a final palace record showing who could attend and who could not, mattered because it turned private preference into official action. Windsor access, meaning permission to enter royal spaces during sensitive events, was never just about walking through a gate. It showed who belonged near the crown when the world was watching. The king knew Tom's removal would wound Camilla, but he also knew leaving the name in place would send another message, that family closeness could bend royal order. William stood near him and chose every word with care. The prince did not speak with anger. He spoke with the cold focus of a man thinking about the future. He told Charles that Windsor could not become a place where private loyalty outranked public order. That mattered, because the royal household survives on clear lines. If those lines blur, critics begin asking who has influence, who has access, and who benefits without duty. Charles listened, and the silence between father and son became its own kind of agreement. The king had not created the pressure alone, but he could no longer pretend he stood outside it. The amended guest list carried his final approval, which meant he had not simply allowed Tom's exclusion, he had accepted it. That truth sat in the room like a locked door. Camilla discovered it before anyone could soften the blow. She entered with the force of a mother already hurt and a wife already suspicious. The queen consort saw the file open, saw Charles's hand resting close to the page, and understood at once that this was not staff confusion. Her son had been turned away by a decision the king had known before the car ever reached Windsor. Camilla did not raise her voice at first. She looked at Charles, then at William, and the room tightened around all three of them. The prince held his ground, but the queen consort's pain made the politics feel suddenly human. She asked why Tom had to learn his place in public. Charles did not answer quickly enough. That pause said everything. What had begun as a name missing from paper now became a marriage tested by silence. There are humiliations that pass quickly, and there are humiliations that leave a mark, because everyone knows they happened. Tom Parker Bowles did not storm. He did not shout. That made the moment worse. He stepped back from the Windsor entrance with the restrained dignity of a man refusing to let strangers see the wound. Inside, Camilla was no longer shocked. She was furious. Tom followed the instruction because refusing would only make the insult louder. A private vehicle, meaning a car arranged away from the main arrival flow to remove someone quietly, was brought forward with careful speed. The main arrival point mattered because it was where status could be seen without anyone saying a word. To be moved from that place was not just a change of route. It was a public lowering. He knew it. The staff knew it. Even the guests pretending not to look knew it. The delay had already done its damage. Staff were told not to discuss the incident, but silence could not erase what had been seen. A royal reception, a formal event where invited guests gather under palace rules, depends on smooth movement and controlled dignity. When that rhythm breaks, everyone notices. Tom sat in the car with his hands still, staring ahead, as Windsor fell behind him. He had entered the day as family. He was leaving it as a warning. Camilla confronted Charles before anyone could wrap the decision in softer words. The queen consort asked why her son had been allowed to discover the truth at the gate, instead of through a private warning. Her pain mattered because this was not only about access. It was about trust. She could accept rules, but she could not accept being left blind, while Tom was made to stand in public shame. Charles looked older in that moment, not weaker, but burdened. The king admitted the list had been changed to protect the monarchy from accusations of blurred family privilege. Family privilege meant the fear that people close to the crown could receive special access without official duty. He explained it carefully. but every calm word sounded colder to Camilla. The explanation may have protected Windsor, yet it had wounded her house. Camilla heard the deeper meaning before Charles finished. The decision was not only about Tom. It reached toward her wider family, limiting how close they could stand to royal ceremony, royal rooms, and royal favor. She looked at the king and asked whether he still saw her family as separate from his life. Charles did not answer fast enough. That question stripped away protocol, leaving only two people facing the cost of the crown. After the anger came the silence. The kind that fills a royal room when every servant has been dismissed and every excuse has run out. Charles and Camilla stood alone, with the closed guest file between them like a verdict neither could escape. For the first time that day, the monarchy disappeared from the conversation, and what remained was a husband, a wife, and a wound. Charles sent the aides away and asked Camilla to stay. The guest file, a palace record showing who had permission to attend a royal event, mattered because it had turned a family bond into an official refusal. Palace management, in simple words, meant the careful control of events, people, and access, so the crown never looked uncertain. But this was no longer management. This was marriage. The king knew that, and the queen consort knew it too. Camilla did not sit. She asked why Tom Parker Bowles had been allowed to suffer the embarrassment in public when one private warning could have spared him. Tom was her son, not a political problem to be moved off a list. Her voice did not break, but the hurt behind it was plain. She could understand rules. She could understand limits. What she could not understand was Charles knowing the blow was coming and letting Tom meet it at the gate. Charles admitted the fear he had not spoken before. He said warning Tom in advance would have looked like negotiation, and negotiation would have weakened the decision. That mattered because royal authority depends on appearing final. Once the palace seems open to private pressure, every rule becomes a request. The king was not proud of it. He was trying to survive the logic of the crown. Camilla heard the explanation and looked at him as if he had chosen a stranger's comfort over hers. The queen consort was hurt less by the exclusion itself than by the order of Charles's loyalty. Monarchy first, tenderness second. Her son had become the proof. Tom had been loved in private, then limited in public, and that difference cut through every careful word. Charles finally said what Windsor had already shown. The boundary would remain. Camilla's children could be loved, invited as family in private moments, and treated with personal warmth, but they would not be positioned as royal extensions. Royal extensions, in plain terms, meant people without official roles being allowed to appear close enough to the crown that the public might mistake access for authority. Camilla understood then that Windsor had delivered a permanent message, not a temporary slight. Outside the palace, the story had already escaped its walls. By morning, the silence of Windsor was no longer enough to contain what everyone had seen. The next morning, the humiliation stopped being a palace secret. It became a picture, a headline, and a national argument. One newspaper front page captured the entire wound. Tom Parker Bowles, standing beside a dark car outside Windsor, jaw tight, eyes lowered, while the castle gates loomed behind him. The headline was merciless, the name not on the list. Windsor had spoken, and Britain was listening. Tom saw the image before anyone explained it. A newspaper front page, the first page designed to seize public attention, mattered because it turned one private wound into a national symbol. Windsor Castle, the royal home tied to ceremony and family memory, now looked less like shelter and more like judgment. Tom had tried to leave with dignity, but the picture made his restraint look like defeat. His silence became public property. Camilla watched the coverage, and every word felt like another door closing. The queen consort understood why the story spread so quickly. Her son was not just a man refused entry. He had become the line between her personal family and the royal world she had married into. Broadcasters framed it as the question Windsor had avoided for years. Where did Camilla's private family end, and where did monarchy begin? She listened without blinking, but her hand tightened when Tom's name came up again. William's role became the sharpest part of the debate. Commentators connected the exclusion to the prince's harder line on royal access, making the decision look strategic, not accidental. Royal access, in plain terms, meant permission to stand close to royal events, royal rooms, and royal influence. That mattered because the public does not always separate affection from authority. William knew confusion could damage the crown, and the future king had chosen clarity, even when clarity looked cruel. Palace aides released a statement, and its coldness fed the fire. They called the decision standard guest protocol, meaning routine rules about who may attend official events. Yet the wording sounded careful, polished, empty. The aides repeated that all invitations were handled through proper channels, but that answer made people wonder which channel had removed Tom in the first place. Charles read the statement once and set it down. The king knew the scandal needed an ending, not another phrase. He had protected the monarchy's boundary, but now he had to decide whether that boundary would be spoken openly or hidden behind palace language. Camilla waited for his next move, and Tom's humiliation hung over both of them like a verdict not yet delivered. The scandal needed an ending, and Charles knew the monarchy could not survive by pretending the wound had never been opened. In the end, the Windsor guest list became more than a list. It became a verdict. Tom Parker Bowles had arrived expecting access, and left carrying a message the monarchy had been too polite to say aloud for years. Camilla felt the sting as a mother, Charles bore it as a king, and William saw it as the painful price of protecting the institution before sentiment could overtake duty. Charles confirmed privately that the revised access rules would remain in place for future Windsor events. Revised access rules, in plain words, meant the updated palace limits deciding who could enter royal spaces during sensitive gatherings. That mattered because Windsor was not only a family home, it was a symbol of royal order, and royal order depends on knowing where every person stands. The king understood the cost, but he also understood the danger of undoing the decision after the whole country had seen it. Tom was not cast out of family life, but he was clearly separated from formal royal privilege. Ceremonial proximity, meaning the visible closeness to royal events and official moments, would no longer be offered without question. Tom absorbed that truth quietly. He chose dignity over protest, because protest would make him look hungry for a place he had just been denied. His silence became his shield. His restraint became the only victory left to him. Camilla accepted the decision with visible pain. The queen consort knew that defending Tom publicly would deepen the damage and make her son the center of a larger war. She could be wounded as a mother, but she could not afford to appear reckless beside Charles. That was the cruel balance of her position. She had gained a crown, but Windsor had reminded her that the crown does not bend easily for love. William's position became unmistakable. The prince believed the monarchy had to tighten its inner circle, even when the cost was personal. He saw the Windsor incident not as punishment, but as correction. The future king had chosen a harder road because he believed softness in the wrong place could become weakness in the eyes of the public. Charles's silence at the gate was redefined in the end. The king had chosen crown discipline over household comfort, and that choice hardened everyone around him. Tom left embarrassed. Camilla was wounded. William stood firm, and the monarchy delivered its final answer. Love may soften royal life, but it does not rewrite royal boundaries. No loose ends remained after Windsor. The crown had protected itself first. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.